My boyfriend's family mocked my cheap engagement ring at dinner, so I excused myself. When I came back, I placed my Olympic gold medal on the table and said, I thought we were showing off our most valuable possessions. Growing up in a small rural town, I learned the value of hard work from an early age. My parents were both teachers who instilled in me the belief that dedication and perseverance could overcome any obstacle. When I showed natural talent in swimming at age 8, they sacrificed everything to nurture that gift, driving me to practices before dawn, working extra jobs to cover competition fees, and rearranging their entire lives around my training schedule. By 16, I was competing nationally. By 18, I qualified for the Olympic team. At 22, I stood on the podium with a gold medal around my neck, representing my country in the 200 meters freestyle. It was the culmination of thousands of early mornings, countless sacrifices, and unwavering determination. After that victory, I had a choice to make: pursue another Olympic cycle or move on with my life. I chose the latter, wanting to experience all the things I'd postponed for my athletic career. I retired quietly, enrolled in university, and tried to build a normal life outside the spotlight. I kept my achievement private, not out of shame, but because I wanted people to know me for who I was now, not what I had accomplished in the pool. My medals stayed locked in a safe deposit box, a cherished memory but not my defining characteristic. That's how I met Jason, in a literature class where he knew me only as Emma, the psychology major with a passion for Austen novels, not Emma the Olympic champion. Our relationship blossomed naturally, built on shared interests and genuine connection rather than my athletic reputation. When he proposed last month with a simple, elegant ring that perfectly matched my understated style, I couldn't have been happier. The modest diamond wasn't flashy, but it represented Jason's thoughtfulness. He had chosen something I would actually wear and love, not something to impress others. We'd been dating for 2 years, but I still hadn't met his extended family who lived across the country. They flew in specifically for our engagement dinner, and Jason was excited for everyone to finally meet. He told me they were a bit traditional and valued success, but I wasn't prepared for what that really meant. The restaurant Jason selected was upscale but comfortable, with white tablecloths and attentive service without feeling pretentious. I wore a simple navy dress, my hair pulled back, and of course, my engagement ring. Jason's family arrived in a flurry of designer labels and air kisses: his parents Richard and Victoria, his older brother Marcus with his wife Stephanie, and his younger sister Claudia. They were polished, poised, and immediately intimidating. The initial pleasantries seemed to go well enough. They asked about my job as a university counselor, nodding with practiced interest while sharing pointed glances I couldn't quite interpret. Then came the moment that changed everything. Victoria asked to see my engagement ring. I extended my hand, naturally proud of the symbol of our commitment. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's smile tightened as she examined the modest diamond. Marcus actually chuckled, quickly disguising it as a cough when Jason shot him a look. Stephanie made a show of comparing it to her own enormous diamond, while Claudia whispered something to her mother that made them both press their lips together to suppress laughter. "It's quaint," Victoria finally said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a compliment. "Jason, darling, you know Harrington Jewelers would have given you the family discount?" "I think it's perfect," Jason replied firmly, squeezing my hand under the table. Richard cleared his throat. "Well, not everyone prioritizes the same things in life. Some people prefer simplicity." The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. Throughout dinner, they made subtle references to status symbols: Claudia's new luxury car, Marcus's vacation home, the family's longtime friendship with certain celebrities. Each story seemed calculated to highlight the gap between their world and mine. They weren't just wealthy, they were obsessed with appearances and social standing in a way that made me deeply uncomfortable. My ring became the unspoken joke of the evening. Whenever I reached for my water glass or gestured while speaking, I caught their eyes flickering to my hand, amusement playing at their lips. Jason seemed increasingly tense, trying to redirect conversations and shooting apologetic glances my way. During dessert, Stephanie was describing their recent anniversary gift exchange. Apparently Marcus had bought her a bracelet that cost more than my annual salary, when Victoria interjected with a pointed look my way. "Of course, some people believe material things shouldn't matter in a relationship." How refreshing. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. These people were judging our relationship, our future, based on the size of a diamond. They knew nothing about me, about what I'd achieved, about the values that actually mattered in life. "Would you excuse me for a moment?" I said quietly, placing my napkin beside my plate. In the restroom, I made a phone call that I never expected to make that night. My parents still lived in our hometown, just 20 minutes from the restaurant. My father answered on the second ring, and I asked him to bring something from their house safe, immediately. When I returned to the table, the conversation had moved on to the family's historic summer home and its recent feature in an architectural magazine. I sat silently, responding when directly addressed but otherwise disengaged from their status signaling competition. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text. I excused myself again, meeting my father in the restaurant lobby. He handed me a small velvet pouch, concern evident in his eyes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. I wasn't, not entirely, but I nodded anyway. Re-entering the dining room, I felt strangely calm. These people thought they knew everything about status and accomplishment, but they knew nothing about real sacrifice or achievement. As I approached our table, Victoria was in the middle of a story about their neighbor, apparently a minor European royal, when she paused mid-sentence, noticing my return. I didn't sit down immediately. Instead, I stood at my place, waiting until all eyes turned to me. Then, without ceremony, I removed the gold medal from its pouch and placed it gently on the table. The overhead lights caught its polished surface, making the engraved Olympic rings unmistakable. "I thought we were showing off our most valuable possessions," I said softly. "This is mine." The silence that followed was absolute. Jason stared at the medal, then at me, his expression shifting from confusion to astonishment. Victoria's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Marcus leaned forward, squinting at the medal as if suspecting it was fake. "You are that Emma Wilson?" Claudia finally whispered. "The swimmer?" I nodded, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "I am. And this medal represents 12 years of 4 a.m. wake-ups, missed birthdays, physical pain, and unwavering dedication. My parents remortgaged their home to support my dream. This is what I value: commitment, sacrifice, and hard work, not the price tag of a piece of jewelry." I picked up the medal, returning it to its pouch. The ring Jason chose is perfect because he selected it with thought and love, knowing exactly what would make me happy. Its value isn't in carats but in understanding. I reached for Jason's hand. "And that's what I'm marrying into, not a last name or a social position, but a partnership with someone who sees me for who I really am." Jason's expression shifted from shock to something else, pride, perhaps, or deeper understanding. He stood, putting his arm around my waist. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's part of my past, not my identity," I replied. "I wanted you to know me, not my accomplishments." The dynamic at the table had transformed completely. Victoria stammered an apology about not realizing who I was. Richard suddenly recalled watching my Olympic race, claiming he'd always been a huge supporter of swimming. Stephanie asked if I'd ever considered brand endorsements, while Marcus examined my ring with newfound appreciation, as if it had somehow increased in value. But their approval meant nothing compared to the look in Jason's eyes, not impressed by my medal, but moved by what it represented about my character. As the evening drew to a close, he whispered that he'd never been more certain about us. We left the restaurant hand in hand, my simple ring catching the streetlight. Behind us, I could hear his family still discussing their discovery, already recalibrating how they'd present me to their social circle. But ahead of us stretched a future built on something far more valuable than their approval: mutual respect, genuine understanding, and the knowledge that true worth isn't measured in diamonds or gold medals, but in the depth of character that remains when all those things are stripped away. The irony wasn't lost on me that the medal I'd kept private for years had finally served its ultimate purpose, not as a trophy to display, but as a reminder that real value comes from within. And sometimes, when people are determined to judge a book by its cover, there's satisfaction in showing them just how wrong their assumptions can be.